All right, so I've started recording this, so we'll be able to post it for folks who aren't able to get in. Thank you for letting me know that we have that limitation. Okay. Okay, so I keep using the word phased in. Our first phase, which we're planning to start on October 5th, will be varsity fall sports: football, cross country, water polo, girls volleyball, and cheer. All right. About 2 weeks after that, we're looking at starting winter and spring varsity sports. First, we'll do winter varsity sports and then spring varsity sports. And at the same time that we're starting those, we'll phase in JV and freshmen as well. So there will be a calendar that we send out that has all of those phase ins. Right now, we're still working with coaches. Coaches also need to volunteer to come in and have contact with students. And so as we work with coaches and we see exactly what that schedule is, we'll keep pushing that out. This is a good time to mention there's a survey that we sent out months ago. We resent it with the link for this meeting. Invites you to put in what sports you're going to participate in. And so if you haven't filled that out, if you do that, that'll help us make sure that we get the right communication out to the right folks with team specific information. All right. So prior to participation, we always have required the orange card, and the orange card is issued after we've got your sports packet and we have your sports physical and all of those types of things. Sam, did you want to talk about the orange card?
Sure.
Sam, you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Hey, all right. Thank you, Nicole. Okay, first of all, thank you all for being with us tonight. We just realized we're using a different format with Zoom. We thought we didn't have the caps. It will be recorded, and if we need to run this meeting again, we will. And you can always reach out to me, email, give me your phone number. I'll get you updated. Okay, so for those of you that have been part of the program before, the orange card, that's the athletic clearance packet. The orange card is the final step that shows that they've gone through all the steps to be able to practice. So we started that process back in May, and I think up to this time we've collected over 200 orange cards. People come in, completed their athletic clearance packets. Either your son or daughter has their orange card or we have it. So this is a little bit different now. So either you have it or we have it, or you haven't done it at all. If you've done it, you're in great shape as far as that goes. If you have not done it, if you go to the athletic webpage at Atascadero High School, scroll down, it'll talk about health screenings, and you can click and download all the paperwork there, which includes the emergency consent card, the health history form, and the physical or health screening card. The fourth component is what we call Dragonfly. That's our electronic platform where we get electronic signatures. Those four components need to be completed. So if you haven't done them, we have about 2 weeks to go. If your son or daughter's in a fall sport, that's going to need to be completed. You can call my office, 805-462-4311, and set up an appointment. I'm pretty much there all day, but officially the school's closed and we accept appointments. You can come on in and we can take care of that done. And then I can check the Dragonfly component from my computer. We can get you all cleared and get that orange card. That's a huge component. That's going to be one of the components that will not allow you to participate if you don't have it. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. All right, so we understand the orange card. There are a couple of other forms that are specific to our COVID experience that have come through our legal team. One of those is going to be the assumption of risk and waiver of liability form. And I'm going to go through what's in that form. That form will reference the athletic COVID-19 protocols form. We're going to go through that as well tonight. And then every day that a student comes to participate, they will need to bring with them the parental active daily symptoms check form. So I know that's a lot of forms, but that is what gives us the ability to come back and to start participating. As we go through these forms, and that's what we're going to do in just a moment, if you look at what's in those forms and you don't feel comfortable, for instance, assuming the risk and waiving liability, remember that participation at this point is voluntary, right? So you can wait until we come back in December when we're out of some of the COVID restrictions and some of these extra levels of security for the school and participate then, okay? All right. On the assumption of risk and waiver of liability form, and this form will be posted to our webpage, like I said, hopefully by the end of the day, Friday, so that you can start to download that and get it filled out. Also, as we get contact information for specific teams, we'll push these forms out with the rest of the information. This is one of those forms, you know, that lawyers are excellent at writing. It starts by explaining that despite our efforts to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, there's still going to be some risk. So we're going to do everything we can to create a safe environment for our athletes to come back and start to condition together with their coaches. We need you to understand that we cannot guarantee 100% that it's going to be without risk. What is important to us here is that we follow all the protocols to reduce the risk as much as we can. The next part of that form is just a section that says that you give permission for your student to participate, understanding the risk, the assumption of risk that's involved in that. Then there's a waiver of liability that says that if the school is following our protocols and your child contracts COVID, that you're not going to sue us. We appreciate that. And then there's an agreement at the bottom to abide by the COVID-19 protocols. And we're going to go over the protocol form so that you know what that is. Okay. So this is one of those kind of standard legal forms that protects the school, but we want you to read that carefully. We believe that our plan is going to mitigate the risks as well as we can. And as long as we all are following these protocols that we're going to go over, we hope that that will be a less riskful environment. Okay. All right. Here's what's in the COVID protocol form. These are things that, again, you're going to sign an agreement saying, hey, we're going to be accountable to the school that we're doing these things. The school is telling you what it is we're going to do tonight so that we're accountable to you. First of all, that form will remind you, you don't need to come to the summer conditioning practices. We keep calling it summer, even though we're in fall, to be able to fully participate when our seasons start. So if you're uncomfortable, you're not sure that this is going to be a safe environment, there's no penalty when the seasons start because you weren't able to participate right now in our conditioning times. Okay. Number two, we need to keep that 6 foot distancing at all times. right? So even while we're working out, while we're exercising, we're going to stay 6 feet apart. We're not going to be sharing equipment except for specific instances in which your coach will explain, hey, right, we're going to play catch, so we're going to toss this ball back and forth. We'll hit that in a minute. Everyone needs to bring their own water bottle, right? You know that you need to stay hydrated while we're working out. I'm going to tell you, even though the form says bring your own water bottle, if it were me, I would bring 2 or 3 water bottles because I drink a lot. Now, we will have a hydration station at practices where, with certain guidelines, we can help refill those bottles during practice. No students will be touching the hydration stations, the water jugs, but we have a plan for that. But everyone needs to come with their own water bottle. Again, I would bring 2 or 3 if it were me. When you arrive, we need to have you dressed for activity. The locker rooms aren't going to be open because right now the rules that we're following don't allow us to have kids in the locker room changing clothes in close proximity to each other. So when you arrive, please be ready to work out. Water polo players, feel free to wear your cover-ups, but please have your swimsuits on ready to go, okay? One of the things you're going to promise us in this protocols form is that you're not going to attend practice if you have symptoms of COVID, and we're going to go over what all those symptoms are. And number 6, because we're trying to keep everyone spaced and protected and limit the contact, we can't have other unauthorized participants attending our practices at this time, okay? The other thing, the last thing on this form says, as conditions change, our protocols and expectations may change, and that you agree to follow the new rules as they change and adapt so that we can keep everybody safe, okay? Again, this form and the assumption of risk and waiver form, trying to get those posted to our website as quickly as possible. And we'll have those available in our athletics office, as well as pushing them out with other information with the specific team information. I apologize. I feel like I'm just giving you a lot of information all at once. Also, for some reason, I'm not advancing to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so these are the symptoms. Now, you'll see there it says active and passive. An active check of symptoms means that you're actually getting out a thermometer, taking somebody's temperature, you're specifically checking them individually for all the symptoms, right? Passive means that in the course of the workout and as things are happening, we're watching for symptoms. And if we see symptoms, then we'll take the appropriate responsive actions to that, okay? In our plan, we're asking parents to do the active symptom checks, okay? So one of the things you'll see in a moment is we're gonna ask parents to take their child's temperature so that we don't have to stop and take everybody's temperature as they're arriving at practice, okay? What we will be doing at practice is really watching for anything that manifests, okay? So this is what we'll be looking for, and this is what we hope you'll be looking for with your student. If they have these symptoms, we're gonna ask that they not come to practice. The first one is fever and chills, cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. Now, we're gonna be watching students as we work out. I will tell you, when I work out, I sometimes have some shortness of breath because I'm not in that great a shape. And we realize some of our students have been primarily couch bound for the last few months. So we're gonna start easy and work our way up. The normal getting winded because you're working out is not what we're looking for. We're looking for students who really are struggling to breathe beyond what would be normal for the amount of activity that they'll be engaged in. This next one, fatigue, muscle or body aches. I'm going to guarantee you some of our athletes are going to have muscle or body aches that are not related to COVID, right? So we're going to ask you to really talk to your students and understand what's happening with their bodies. If they have that general achiness that is manifestation of illness, keep them home. If their muscles are sore from working out, we're going to ask you to be the judge of that, right? Headaches, new loss of taste or smell. It's interesting here that the phrasing, it's the new loss of taste or smell. I live with my mother who's lost her taste of smell a long time ago, but it's the new loss of taste or smell that we're looking for as one of the COVID symptoms. Sore throat, obviously congestion, runny nose. Now, we're mindful, we understand that we're also entering into a regular flu season, right? We can't stop to distinguish right now. So if students have these symptoms, as well as nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, we're asking you to keep them home until their symptoms have cleared or until you have a negative COVID test. If we see these symptoms in practice, what we're required to do is have that student step away from practice and call to be picked up. For us to allow them back to practice, we either need a doctor's note saying that they're negative for COVID, or we need to keep them out for the 14-day quarantine period, okay? And I know that's a bummer because, again, some of these symptoms may not necessarily be COVID, but for us, we have to be super vigilant here. If we see these symptoms, then we're required to either, again, have a COVID test come back negative or to have a 14-day quarantine period. And the purpose of that, of course, is to protect the rest of the athletes. This is one of those areas where we're really going to rely on parents and students to be honest with us, report the symptoms if you have them, help us keep this as safe and as environment as we can. Okay. This is the Parental Active Daily Systems Check. We're going to have this available for coaches to hand out. It's a half piece of paper. We'll have it online. We'll email it out to parents. We're going to try and get this to you in as many ways as we can. Every day that a student comes to practice, they have to have this with them filled out. They're going to come to the check-in, and part of that check-in procedure will be to show this card with the time that you took the temperature and what the temperature is and all of the questions answered, okay? If you've answered yes to the questions, please stay home, because what's going to happen is if you bring this and it says yes, or if you bring this and your temperature was over 100.4 degrees, we have to send you home from practice. So when you bring this to us and it has the athlete's name and the parent's signature, we're taking that as our evidence that you have done the active check and that you're symptom-free to join us in practice. Okay, so please be faithful in filling these out. If a student arrives to practice and they don't have this filled out with a parent signature, we are not going to be able to allow them into practice, right? We're going to have to turn them away. Now, the time that you take the temperature should be within about 12 hours of when they show up for practice. So if you're getting up and going to the work in the morning, take the temperature before you leave, and that way your student will have their daily symptoms check all filled out, ready to go. Okay. All right. When students arrive at practice, first of all, they're going to arrive dressed in their practice gear. We already talked about that. They are going to exit the cars with their masks already on. We're going to talk more about masks in a moment. They are, as they get out of their cars and come to the checkout areas, going to stay 6 feet apart from other athletes and other people. They're going to bring their signed daily symptoms check form that we just looked at. They're going to have their own water, and they're going to have their own personal gear that they don't share with anyone. And they're going to check in and go straight to their cohort area. The arriving at practice is the time that we're nervous about, because the tendency is to arrive, to kind of bunch up at the entrance where we're doing check-in, get out of your car carrying your mask, not having it on yet. So this is really an important time for us to make sure that as soon as you're leaving your car, mask on, you're distancing 6 feet, and you're following in a nice orderly fashion through the check-in and into your cohort area. We really want to emphasize, right, this moment that we follow the protocols carefully. During practice, students are going to remain with their assigned cohort, and I'll talk about cohorts also in a moment. They're going to stay 6 feet apart throughout the practice. They're going to wear their mask according to the guidelines. So these are the guidelines. There's a whole slide on those. I'll get to those in a moment. They're only going to use their personal water bottle or water bottles, plural, and they're not going to share water with anybody, right? My daughters like to use the Gatorade bottles that squirt. Even though you're squirting from a distance, please don't share your water bottles with each other. Keep those personal to yourself. And they may, throughout practice, have their water bottle or bottles refilled as directed. We'll have a protocol in place for that. What we can't have is students just walking up to the water jugs and grabbing the spigot and filling up their own bottle, because now we have to stop and re-sanitize the whole hydration system there. Okay, so as long as you listen to your coaches, follow those directions, we're going to be in good shape here. After practice, students are going to still stay 6 feet apart and wear their masks. We hope that when coaches give the specific start and end times to practice, that however you're handling transportation, we need students to arrive close to the time when we start, and we need students picked up quickly. We can't have students loitering or congregating on campus. Okay. We hope that you'll go home then, take a moment to disinfect your water bottle, any of the gear that you used, so that it's sanitized and ready to go the next day. All right. I'm going to stop here and just say, I really sympathize with our teachers teaching class online. I hate not being in a room with you and being able to see your reactions and have you easily stop me for a question here and there. Do jump into the chat if you have questions. Sam is monitoring that.
You ready for me to come forward?
Oh, are you ready to answer some questions?
I'm going to come over there with you.
Okay, Sam's
That was choppy.
going to come over here, and he's going to stay 6 feet away from me for a moment, though, until I open up the chats here.
I've got most of the things here.
All right.
Okay.
It's all yours, Sam.
All right. Hey, thank you again. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I apologize. We thought we were going to be open to more. Don't fret. If you are communicating with other parents, let them know that I'll run this again tomorrow night. I'll get something out. And again, you can always get a hold of me. I understand by my phone that the orange card explanation was choppy. So the orange card is the culmination of the athletic clearance packet. That information is online. That's been online since May. You download the emergency consent card, health history form, the actual health screening card, download it, complete it, bring it to your doctor, get it signed, get it all completed, and make sure you include the biggest thing people are forgetting are their insurance. And then you go to the online platform, which is Dragonfly. On Dragonfly, you complete, there's some electronic signatures and information to keep, including joining boosters. Complete that. When you have that all completed, come to our office. The offices are, the school's not officially open. If you call the office, leave a message, email me. I'm pretty much here all day. I do run in and out and upstairs, but I will be there. I processed over 200 over the summer. I want to get all of those up to speed as best that I can. If your child already has completed the athletic clearance packet, you either have the orange card or I do. Some of them we kept, some of them the athletes took. So we'll make sure our coaches get those copies that I have. And if you lost it, don't worry about it. Call me. I've got plenty of orange paper to copy on. It's not a huge deal. Okay, so I'm going to go into some of the questions that came up. I'm going to kind of run around right now on a few things. And Dan, I'm going to bring you in on a couple here in just a second. He mentioned grades. For academic eligibility, we just had a grading period. This is summer. This is, quote, endless summer until December. So the nearest grading period to determine academic eligibility is going to happen in the November grading period. So please encourage your children, not only on the academic end, and hopefully they're getting acclimated to that, but on the attendance end. We have attendance and academic eligibility, which we will continue to monitor. So that's really important as we go into December with the hopes that we're going to open up. Question regarding thermometers. I'm going to bring Dan into that. He didn't see the chat. Why we are not using thermometers.
Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why we're not doing the thermometer checks ourselves. First of all, we don't have the thermometers. Second of all, the amount of time it takes for us to check all of our athletes in is prohibitive for us, right? Would you add, Kristen? And so those are the main determinations the district has said. We'd like parents to do the active check. We'll do the passive check, and that'll allow us to use the time that we have at practice for practicing instead of taking all of the temperatures. The other thing is that in the cohort model, if we're not stopping to take temperatures from everybody, then the person who's checking students in, we're going to talk about the cohorts in a moment, isn't necessarily one of the members of that cohort. If we're stopping to get close enough to do temperature checks, then the person checking temperature has to be assigned to the cohort. And that means that instead of one temperature check station, we would have to break it down for some sports for quite a few check-in stations. So we're hopeful that this is going to make that process run more smoothly.
Thank you. Next, one of the questions I saw was on multi-sport athletes. So right now under our current guidelines and what's permissible, and this is happening across all the high schools, that they can only participate and be in one cohort. So for the summer, or until we advance past that, they're going to have to choose at this time one sport. That doesn't mean that they have to choose one sport for the entire year. Of course, we're banking on the fact that things are going to get better. Restrictions are going to be lessened. We're going to be able to open up cohorts more. But for right now, in order for us to get this going, they're going to have to choose that cohort. We can't make that decision for you. Typically, the summers tend to be more of the prep time for the fall sports. So you're going to have to make that decision. Athletes are not going to get penalized, of course, but you're going to have to make that decision, which is best for you. Our coaches are all on board. They understand. We had it was a really good meeting on Monday. They understand how we're going to roll this out. You noticed in the dates how we're rolling it out. We're rolling it out by seasons also. It also is going to give us a chance to get on our feet for things that we didn't anticipate or adjustments that we need to make. We're just trying to, I'm trying to build it so this didn't come with a instruction booklet like graduation. We're constructing this all anew, and I want to make sure it's right. I want to make sure it's safe for you, our athletes, and our parents. The multi-sport, I had a question on multi-sport athletes in the regular season. So my answer to that is simple. We hope we're going to continue to move forward and move into a point in time where when we hit December, that we can actually be doing all the things that we would do in what we would fondly recall as a normal year. We are going to allow students to play multiple sports when we get to that point. Yes, there's going to be some overlapping. What you need to know right now in terms of the schedules, I've almost completed the schedules for next year. I still have some open points. There is going to be some overlap. Our local athletic directors got together and we've created a schedule that certain sports are going to be played on certain days. For example, in the what we call spring A and spring B, which is a combination of winter and spring, basketball is going to be on Tuesday and Thursday nights, as is soccer. Softball and baseball, which are going to overlap on that, are going to be on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Track is going to be a Friday and a Saturday. So there's going to be some areas there that is going to accommodate as best that we can those schedules. We are going to have a couple dates in there where if we're allowed to, if we're able to attend tournaments, there's a couple tournaments like basketball has a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that's going to happen. And our next set of meetings with our coaches, and we're not even there yet because we don't know what that, we kind of know what it's going to look like. But right now our focus is on getting things going for right now, getting kids active, getting them acclimated, implementing this new system. The regular season, those questions, I love it. Thank you. We've been looking at all that, Mr. Andrus, myself, and the coaches. We've been meeting with the district administration weekly. I think we have a pretty good plan. It's not going to be perfect for everybody, but we're going to do our best to make it work, and we're going to advise and counsel our multi-sport athletes we want to encourage them to do it. But again, for me personally, their health and well-being is most important. And there's some guidelines there about how many hours a week they can participate, and their academics and mental well-being, as well as their physical well-being, are going to play into that. So when we get to that point, that's why we sent out that survey that is for your students to fill out. I give them multiple choices within a season so I can get a feel for how many multi-sport athletes we have. I have my numbers from last year and I'll look at my numbers for this year. Our coaches are committed to working together for that. And that's going to look a little different because a basketball player, baseball player could be playing basketball on Tuesdays and Thursdays and baseball on Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's a Monday and Friday practice day. And I'm just putting that out there briefly so you can kind of get a feel for what's coming. We're going to support our athletes to do what they would like to participate in, and we're going to feel our way out through it, because this is certainly not what we're accustomed to.
Same.
Yes.
Let me finish the
Okay.
slideshow, because you're answering questions that are on slide.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm going to step back again.
All right.
Continue to text me.
All right.
Sorry, Dan.
Oh, that's okay.
It was done.
Sam didn't realize I was in the middle. Hopefully we're going to get some more of these things here going on. Sam, on the chats, there's a place where you can type a message to everyone in the waiting room all at once. If you would do that, that'd be great. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So let's move on, and then we'll take questions again. On your screen, you should see the cohort model explained. So the cohort model is what the state has put out for guidelines, not just for athletics, but for all extracurriculars, as well as for academic support. So we're using this model to allow us to come back. State defines a cohort as a group of up to 14 students and 2 adults. Adults can only be in one cohort and students can only be in one cohort. So one of the things that coaches will be doing is reaching out. An adult becomes part of a cohort when we assign them to a cohort, or as soon as they're within what we're calling the bubble, that physical area of the cohort. And for us right now, the bubble is 10 yards. So many of our head coaches are going to stay 10 yards away from students at all times so that they can work with the whole team, one cohort at a time, without ever becoming attached to a cohort. That means that we're going to need more help from some of our parents to help monitor those cohorts or to be part of those cohorts, right? And so your coaches may be reaching out to you to see who can help with the cohort management. What Sam was talking about as well is during this, well, again, what we're calling the endless summer, students can only be in one cohort, which means they can only practice with one team. When we actually get to December and we're starting our regular season, you can play 2 or 3 sports. And we're going to have, again, meetings then to really talk through what that means. And if we have 3 sport athletes, we're probably going to want to meet individually to make sure that we've got all of the pieces in place for that. There will be, in answer to Emma's question, there will be multiple cohorts for several of our teams because we have more than 14 people on a team. So if you picture the football field for football practice, that means that each cohort has to stay 10 yards away from every other cohort. So what we envision on the field is you'll have a cohort and then a 10-yard break, and then a cohort, and then a 10-yard break, because we have to keep the cohorts isolated from each other for us to continue to run our practices, okay? That gets a little trickier in some of our sports, but again, we're gonna work with individual coaches, make sure we have the specific plan in place that we can communicate out to those teams. For now, the cohorts or the students will pick one cohort to be in. Now here's something I'll mention before I go on to face coverings. Some of our athletes are in academic cohorts. So we're also reaching out to some students who need some support academically, especially because we need you to stay academically eligible, but also because our first job is academics. And so if a student is in an academic support cohort, they can't also be in an athletic cohort. So if you have questions about that individually with your students, please reach out to either Sam or myself or your school counselor, and we'll talk through what that means so that you can make a decision that fits. Okay. Water polo will be in cohorts. There are some specific guidelines for pools that we'll be going over with our water polo players and parents. Face coverings. Like many of you, I hate wearing the face covering, but I do it because I want kids to get back to school. So while we're at practice, face coverings, and this is the legal information that we have. This is a quote from our lawyers and the state. Face covering should be worn except in swimming, distance running, or intense aerobic activity. Most of the things we're doing, the students will keep their face coverings on. However, if the coach is getting ready to ask the students to do something that qualifies as intense aerobic activity, then that coach might again spread everyone. You're always going to be 6 feet apart, but he may ask you to take another couple steps away from each other. Go ahead and take your mask off, right? Do that activity and then put your mask back on, okay? We're also going to be recommending to coaches that every once in a while they spread everyone out a little extra and have everyone take off their mask, have a mask break, get good air in their lungs again, okay? The masks should be cloth masks. The blue paper masks that a lot of us wear, when you start to sweat, they become wet and start to stick to your face. And as that starts to stick to your face, that starts also then to inhibit breathing. So we really recommend a cloth mask. We're going to tell you no N95 or those really thick masks. They're designed to restrict air to the point that they are unhealthy to exercise in, okay? We have cloth masks here at the school. So if on the first day you come in one of those blue paper masks or you come in something else, we can check out a mask to you, but we can't check out a mask to you every day. So once we check out a cloth mask, we're going to need you to take care of that and bring it back as part of your equipment. Okay. Neck gaiters. So if you watched college football or pro football this weekend, you'll notice a lot of the coaches were wearing neck gaiters instead of the traditional masks. I'm going to tell you that Kristen. So athletes can participate in multiple sports starting in December when we start our seasons. They cannot be in multiple sports during the next 2.5 months of workout. That's summertime. That's where you're going to need to pick one. Okay. Neck gaiters are not recommended by the CDC. However, they do comply with our legal requirement for face coverings. So if you prefer a gaiter, you can use a gaiter. You got to keep it on, right? And that's one of the big things that we're going to be watching for with our athletes. I see people often out in public and they pull their mask down every time they want to talk to somebody. And we can't do that, right? One, we don't want your hands up on your mask, and two, you got to keep your mask on. So we'll be watching for those. If somebody has a mask and it becomes wet and starts to stick to their face and really inhibit breathing, then we need to stop and change that mask. So either at that point we would check out a school mask, or some of you have multiple masks that you might want to carry an extra in case your mask gets wet and you want to change it during practice. Coaches will also wear masks the whole time that they're with students, right? And we're also reminding our coaches not to walk over to their cohort and pull down their mask so they can really hear them. Got to keep those masks on as much as we all hate them. Okay. All right, equipment. We're almost done here. It's recommended that students bring their own hand sanitizer. Now we have cases of hand sanitizer that will pass out. The hand sanitizer that we have is in 8 fluid ounce bottles. So once we hand out hand sanitizer to those who need it, you also need to not be sharing your hand sanitizer all around. There will be times when we ask students, and we'll have a hand sanitizing station there as well, to stop and sanitize their hands before the next part of practice. Here's why. Although we're going to avoid sharing equipment, there are some equipment that you really are going to need to be able to share, right? Balls fall into that category. So we will sanitize all the balls before practice. Before we pass out balls for students to share, we'll have students sanitize their hands again. They'll go get sanitized balls. And if they're going to keep working with that shared equipment for a certain duration of time, then we'll stop and re-sanitize the hands and get a new bucket of sanitized balls. We're really trying hard to make sure that protocols we have in place are going to keep people safe. So we recommend that you have your own hand sanitizer. We'll have hand sanitizer there to hand out as necessary as well. Okay. And again, bring a water bottle. If it were me, I would bring a couple of water bottles. Sam alluded to this last part. When we return to season in December, students are going to need to meet eligibility requirements, right? So that's the grade eligibility, and that's the attendance eligibility. Make sure we have that going on. When we get to December and it's time to announce tryouts and put out our finalized schedule for practices and competitions, we'll have some more meetings, right? I know we'll have some team-specific meetings. At that time, again, if you're a multi-sport athlete, especially if you're a 3-sport athlete, we're going to set up meetings with you to specifically talk about those parameters, what the rules are for 3-sport athletes, and how we're going to manage that among the different sports that you're playing. It's our intent to do our very best to use the next couple of months, 2.5 months, to help our students start working out, get off the couch, get back with their team, We just want to do that the safest way that we can, following the guidelines that will keep us from getting shut down. As we move into December, we are really, really hoping and praying that we're allowed to participate in full competitions. We're really hoping that everyone does their part during this fall and winter time so that we can keep the spread down and allow our students to compete when we get to December. Okay, that, I think I have one more. Here we go. Again, I'll end where I started. We're trying to be accountable to you for the safety of your kids and to run a program that gives them opportunity. We're asking you to be accountable for us, that you do the daily symptom checks, that you pay attention to your equipment. Students especially, we need you to be accountable in arriving with your mask on, staying 6 feet apart, following all the rules throughout that practice. I'm excited. It's a hard thing to start as a new principal at a school and not have any kids around. And that means that all the best parts of being in a high school aren't happening right now. So I'm really looking forward to having our students back. I'm going to stay outside the 10-yard bubble, but I'm going to be out there because I can't wait to see our kids going again. All right, that's the end of our presentation. I'm going to mute somebody here, and then I'm going to look through the chats to see if I missed anything. Sam, you want to take over here for a minute?
Thank you for your input or for sharing your concerns. Once again, everything that's been set up has been set up. Protocols are in line with the guidelines set forth by the state, the county, and obviously working with the district office and our legal counsel. I had a question regarding the survey. We did send that to the parents, and I will send that to the students additionally tomorrow. We've gotten several so far. I think we've gotten over 170 responses. So the parents have been sharing that. We wanted to kind of keep you both in the loop. We know that our students are getting inundated with emails. So we'll update that survey. And if I have an opportunity, I know a lot of people weren't able to get in. I'm going to sit down and discuss this with Dan, and I'll have some sort of a follow-up. Feel free to email me. And thank you again for attending tonight. Very much appreciated. I appreciate your passion for wanting to return, and thank you for your understanding in us having to follow specific guidelines. Thank you again.
Let me jump in there.
Yep.
All right, we really are just about done. Just want to acknowledge, first of all, Sam has put in hours and hours and hours setting this up to get our students and coaches back. And I want to acknowledge the work that he's done. I really appreciate that. A couple of things I saw in the chats. ACE students play sports with Atascadero High School. So we've sent this information out to them as well. We're going to send that survey out again. It looks like some of you haven't seen it. We'll make sure that that link is both posted on our website and sent out so that you can see it. There was a question about if there are only groups of 14, want to make sure my kid's in the group of 14. Remember, we can have multiple cohorts per sport. So we're not just bringing back 14 football players or 14 cross-country runners, but each student will be assigned to a cohort of 14 as the team may be multiple cohorts. So I don't want anyone to worry that, oh my gosh, you're only going to let 14 people run cross country. We've got that worked out with our coaches, and we'll be working on that. Okay. I know that it's hard right now. If this were a regular meeting, we'd have all these forms to hand to you right now before you left and all of our sign-up sheets. We're going to keep pushing out that information to make sure everybody has it. Oh, I didn't mention this in this meeting, but I see it in the chat. Our coaches are not allowed to use regular whistles that they blow into. So we are ordering some other types of things for them to get students' attentions. We will have some megaphones and Some of our coaches are going to use microphones and speakers and things like that to make sure kids can hear them from 10 yards away. We are really trying to be creative to make sure that we follow all the rules and still make this the best situation possible there for everybody. Appreciate the chats. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, that would be fine. Otherwise, you're welcome to log out and we'll keep pushing information out to you. If you want to stay and chat, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, then I can see you. We're happy to take questions.
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering when girls tennis is going to be, because it's normally a fall sport.
It's going to be in the spring, Rocky. Is that Rocky?
Yes. So
Yeah.
girls tennis is a spring sport this year. It's in that combined winter spring time.
That will be the November date.
Okay. And boys soccer is the same.
No, boys soccer will be October 19th.
It is also going to be considered a spring sport.
We have spring A and spring B, Rocky.
So
Oh, okay.
two things, just so we're talking apples and apples. For our current, what we're calling the continued summer workouts, every 2 weeks, we're going to start adding in sports, right? So when you hear Sam say, oh, that's going to be in October, that's going to be in November, that's for this workout time, right? We're going to keep adding those in. Then when we get to January, we'll be in a fall season and then a combined winter spring season. We'll get both of those schedules out for you.
Excuse me? Hello?
Hello. Go ahead. Okay.
So I have a friend asking me to ask this question. If their student is full-time ACE, can they still participate at the high school sports?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
We have a
I thought there used to be a requirement of certain amount of classes at AHS, and that's no longer?
No, we have a full multi-sport or multi-school agreement in place with CIF.
Okay.
So full-time A students can compete with AHS.
Okay, perfect.
Before you go,
Yeah.
I know you were monitoring a lot of questions, as were several of you. If you email me some of those things, what I'm going to try to work on tomorrow is response to all those. If you know.
Sam, you can save the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll save the chat.
I don't mind, but you
Hey,
can
that one's
save
above
the chat.
me, Felicia. I don't even know how to do Facebook Live. That's why you got to be there on October 1st. I'll be lucky if I can pull names out of a jar.
But I don't mind. Whatever you need, just give me a holler.
I've been trying to, my phone's been blowing up with text messages and then the chats, and I'm trying to write stuff down and figure this out. It's been good. They've been great questions.
I'll send you the file. I saved
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Great. And I just let everyone in the waiting room know that we recorded this. In fact, I think it's still recording. And so we'll push the recording out as well. We should be able to post that on our website. Although I hate the way I look in recordings. We'll do it anyway.
I think a lot of people are wondering if the coaches are going to be reaching out to them.
So
Yes.
what's going to happen is coaches will start to get the list from the online form, and then they'll be able to reach out to their athletes.
So coaches are actually able to interact with their athletes right now on a verbal basis, and then physically October 5th. Is that correct?
They've always been able to interact with them, email, telephone, text. We just haven't had direct contact.
Right.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, is it going to be every day or is it a couple times a week during the summer session?
Right. During the summer session, that'll depend on the sport. So we keep using the words duration and frequency. So how often practices happen and how long those practices are, we're working out with the coaches of individual sports. 1, to avoid injury. 2, to make sure that it's appropriate to the type of sport. And 3, to make sure that our facilities are fairly shared among all of the different sports.
Okay, and specifically about water polo, I understand there'll be 14 in a cohort. Does that mean 14 in the water at the same time?
We're still clarifying what the rules are in the pool because technically our pool is chlorinated, which makes it a sanitized environment. So we're trying to get further specific information from county health and our lawyers about what that is. And so as soon as we have a clear guideline, then we'll make sure that we've set up our practices so that everybody has equitable and sufficient time in the pool, but we're not sure what the rule is going to be about in the water and on the deck and those kind of things.
Okay, so they will still have to stay a certain number of feet apart in the water, correct?
Yes.
Yes, they
Okay.
still
Yes.
are going to be limited for what lane they're in and all those kind of things. We can't just load up the pool.
We have,
Okay.
we have guidelines for lap swimming. We are determining, for example, if they were going to tread water, I imagine there's going to have to be a 6-foot spacing minimum.
Okay, thank you.
Especially on deck. Okay. Sorry, I had to put my glass on to read the chats. That's sad. We will be pushing out a master schedule as it is available, and we'll be adding to that as we're ready to start phasing in different sports every 2 weeks. But as soon as we have a master schedule for this phase in, we'll push that out so people can look and anticipate what's coming. Okay. I'm impressed. There are still 61 people hanging in there. If you have questions, let me know. Okay.
So if we want to help our coach and be the one responsible for the cohort for the coach, we work that out with our coach, correct?
The coaches will be working that out with their team parents.
Okay. And
And
are we required to have the volunteer stuff in place or no?
what we're going to use are our chaperone guidelines
Mhm.
because the coach will be there to actually directly supervise the teams from a distance. We're going to use our chaperone guidelines instead of the full volunteer guidelines.
You got to stay, you're going to have to stay more than 6 feet away on the check-in. So one of the requirements is going to be for you, Felicia, is you're going to have to be able to, can you see me?
Well, not
Yeah.
right now on our
Okay.
camera.
We're going to have to do a glass check because are you going to be able to read that half-page sheet from 7 feet away? So there is going to be a test.
There's not really going to be a test.
You have
That's
to.
one of the requirements.
Size 20 font.
Yes. Well, we've already took it from 4 on the page to 2 on the page so that I could read it from 10 feet away. So yes.
Okay.
And like I say, the coaches, so what we're doing right now, and I didn't explain this to this group, Sam and I are setting up meetings now after we did the big coaches meeting. We're setting up team by team meetings with coaches to work out exactly what the details will be so that then we can push that information out to parents as well, right? So we started with the general information. Now we'll be honing down to the very specifics, and we're making good progress on that. And I think that information will be coming pretty soon for team specific information.
It's equivalent to being an independent study teacher. Every sport has different logistics, setups, facilities, and we've been working on this for a long time, but we haven't been able to hone in on it till we actually knew what the guidelines were going to be. So now we're really honing in on it, and coaches' input has been good. People are just going to have to accept whether they agree with some things or not. It's optional to participate. You know, there were some people that, and I appreciate their concern, but we're going to be going the direction that we're led and directed to. So hopefully, it's understandable if they don't want to participate. We want them out there. We want to make it as safe as possible. And we're trying to uncover every stone to make it happen.
Okay. Man, something was in my head and then I read a chat and now it's not in my head anymore. There you go. It's the way it worked. Oh, so here's what was in my head. Sam and I had the coaches meeting on Monday. We got set up for this meeting, and then the county went from purple to red. So now we're also looking at what the new red guidelines are versus the purple guidelines, and that'll change our ability to take some of our teams indoors at some point here. And so we're going to start wading through all of that information as well. Yes. By the way, Nancy is my wife. Those of you who think I look like a handsome Nancy, thank you, but that's my wife. I used her professional account hoping that we could get everyone in and last longer than an hour. All right. It has been an hour, and so I'm going to suggest if you still have questions, email them to Sam or I, or both of us. And if you have really complicated questions, just call Sam so he can really explain it in full, or me. Really appreciate you coming. I hate this forum. I'd rather see you in person, but I appreciate you coming and listening and participating. We're going to keep pushing information out in as many different ways as we can so that you have it. If there are no more questions, I'm going to suggest we call it a night.
Thank you for your help with the raffle tickets, by the way, everybody, and thank you for your participation.
If you haven't purchased raffle tickets, you should start purchasing raffle tickets and get ready for our drive-through barbecue.
We're over our 300 threshold. We want to get to 500.
All right. Okay. I'm happy to stay on so you can keep looking at me for a while, but the meeting is really over now. If you want to, go do something else.
I just read one. For Zoom meetings over 100 people, the large meeting add-on is required. Thank you.
I'm aware of that now. I swear, Sam, every time I try and use technology, it bites me right in the rear.
You know what? We should have known with how well the meeting went on Monday night. I walked out of Monday